Hello, welcome to this week's Leadership Lunch Chat with myself and Jen Wilson. We are always happy to be here to talk to you each week. And as we're coming out of busy season, we're definitely ramping up with lots of good discussions that we're having with accounting firms all over. So, one of the discussions that has definitely been an issue, and we've talked about it whether it's been busy season or not, is the work compression and also just staffing issues and so forth. And I want to preface this conversation to say this has always been an issue. Uh, what it takes is solving it. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about today is really leveling up that conversation into being a destination employer. It's thinking about this from a more global and high level of your practice and your business, whoever you are, because the fact is, when we just think about one thing, we're not solving for all the things that could be creating the issues of why people leave and why there's work compression and too much work and maybe not profitable work. And it all works together and making sure that people are able to achieve their desires in their careers and also have the quality of life that we need. And so, with that, I will allow you, Jen, to start off the conversation and we'll take it from there.
Thanks. So I kind of want to frame this in being a destination workplace, and what does it take to be that? And almost, Amy, like the listener or you and I, we have some control over what it's like in our workplaces, and to create that destination workplace inside our firms. But there's a little bit of me that wants to call to all of us to become a destination profession, because right now we are not. Counting enrollments are down, in schools, and people are leaving the profession at a pretty good clip. Now, it's not to say, it's doomsday or something, but we certainly are not on the upswing. So it's something for us to look at across the profession. And if our firms were more destination workplaces, then we'd call to more people to come into this profession. But we also have to watch sort of the public persona, especially social media, and what we're saying about the work and the busy seasons and capacity. And, we're wearing the red badge of courage or something about how many hours we work and how hard we're toiling and how many weekends we've lost. And then we wonder why people aren't enrolling in accounting programs. So just something to think about here as it relates to this. But what we're calling firm leaders to do is just to say, okay, what can we do here at our firm to make sure that we are attracting people, magnetizing them to us versus repelling them. And so, like, what makes an attractive workplace? And I'm going to start with my go-to, my favorite, remote and blended, and really just, I'm going to say anytime, anywhere, flex work. Being a flexible employer is really critical to being a destination workplace. That doesn't mean less work. Sometimes people hear flex as less. Sometimes it is less because it's part-time or fractional or summer's off or 4-day work weeks or whatever it is. Sometimes it is less work, but most of the time it's just working from the destination or the location that works for me today and working the hours that work for me today, tomorrow, the next day. And those might be different hours each day, depending on what else I have going on. And as long as I'm meeting my goals and producing the results that are expected and needed, my employer shouldn't care where or when I work. So that's my first attribute I would throw down to be a destination workplace.
Yeah. And I think it goes beyond remote because I can still have too much work and be remote. And as we're seeing, coming out of busy season and of this COVID time when so many people were remote, I think remote is table stakes, or having the option to be remote or have a flexible work schedule between coming into the office and working from home. I think you're going to lose people without that. But that is the bare minimum. of being a destination workplace, because on top of that, I have to be happy with the clients that I'm working with, be able to see a future career, and that my family won't be harmed by me staying in this job. And so, where I'm seeing the biggest issues is not necessarily in entry level and staff people. It's when we get to that middle management area, because now you're at this crux of, do I want to be partner? What does my career look like? Is it going to continue like this? And one of my pet peeves that I hear a lot is, well, this is just the profession. And that's just not true. We can keep saying that, but we can change the workplace to make it a better workplace and more feasible. So I think what's hard is there's a generational difference between people that are in partnership, that have put in the hours, that is a normal way of living, the way they've lived for 30, 40 years, right? And so it's very hard to look at the profession differently and servicing clients differently and so forth. But that's really what it's going to take in order to make sure that you've got partners to come in eventually so that you can retire. So the fact is that this is work. This is really like true innovation in your practice, of thinking about how you can do things in new ways, not just changing ways you've always done it. And so the first part of that is really listening, not listening in the aspect of uh, getting frustrated with the answers that you're hearing, but listening to research and to observe what's happening and observe people's feelings and taking them seriously. Because if all that's happening every year is you're saying that things are going to change and then they don't change, you can't be surprised when your best people leave. And those were the people that you were hoping that were going to be your bench strength.
Yeah. Sad story over there, Amy. And you're right. I just was at a conference with 2,000 people, and I had a bunch of folks from the transformational leadership program we teach come up to me, graduates, longtime graduates. The room was, there were a bunch of them there. It was really exciting to see them again, but they were, pulling me aside and being pretty sad and negative. And by now they've made partner. They're partners. They're new partners, but they're like, man, this is, my family's suffering. I'm suffering. I don't know if I want to own this firm. And that's not what you want to hear, from people who are that deeply invested and that far along. But that's kind of where we are. And I just thought of something that's not really off track, but it's inside the conversation. But you hit it with me. I run with a group of women. We call ourselves the Run Girls, and we run whenever we can together, but at least once a week I'm with one of the Run Girls. And last year we did a 50K for some crazy reason. And, we do hard things. That's one of our mottos. We do hard things. So I bring that up because I was listening to you and I was thinking, if traditionalists do hard things called working millions of hours and, wearing the red badge of courage and giving up weekends and not attending kids' events and stuff, if we were capable of those hard things, then we need to roll up our sleeves and do the hard things to change the business model. Mm-hmm. Because I when we're talking to more senior partners about this, they're like, man, raising fees, calling clients, automating this stuff, outsourcing, offshoring, adding admin, that's hard, man. I don't even know where to start. It's just hard, and I'm like, yeah, but you've been doing something really hard.
Yes.
And maybe it isn't that hard what you've been doing. Maybe you've just been like succumbing to a bad business model and operating inside of it, having to make up for it by toiling more than you had to. I know we could work smarter. I know we could make more money and work less hours. I know it. And so I just think we have to do the hard things to do that, and not all at once, but quickly. I think the market is moving so fast. We can't wait. We have to do these things. So we have to right size capacity. I think that's part of what we're talking about here. Is another destination workplace is one that has intelligent capacity. The amount of work we have is not too much for the resources we have available to us. And we don't expect those resources to suffer while they produce our work product. Instead, we're trying to build a firm that brings people joy, not suffering.
Well, and I think there's two things in that I see as that can get in the way. Is one is many partners that have been partners for a long time, they don't mind working this way. So when people are complaining about the work, they actually don't want to. I don't see that they want to work less. Like they've gotten used to this life, and actually, sometimes it's not the fear of change; it's the fear of working less. I had a firm that I worked with, and got them turned around where they were literally leaving at 5 or 6 during busy season and making more money than they've ever made. And they kept saying, like, I don't want to, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know what to do with that time now that I have it, or I don't believe it's going to stay this way. What if I fill this time and then it goes off this is called managing a business. This is called being an entrepreneur. This is called being an operator, and making sure that you're creating a business that you can. But when you have that space, what are you going to do with it? And the second piece that I see, kind of one piece leads to the other, but you brought up young partners, and this is a hard thing. I was a young partner once, so I've experienced what they go through, and I really don't think young partners' voices are heard enough. So we have a partnership, but the main partners are the ones that have been there the longest, that are most used to the way things have always operated. And so when we have young partners coming in and they're actually afraid that there may not be a firm or a business for them to take over when it's their time, we have to weigh their opinions into the conversation. And they've got the fresh energy to be able to take some of that work when it seems really hard, of how they're going to go execute some of those actions on a plan to change some of these very hard things, like you said. But little by little, they're not that hard. In summary, when you look back, you're like, wow, I can't believe how much I did. But it isn't like you have to do it all at one time. And I think people look at something like that and they think they have to do it all at one time. And they're not actually utilizing people right within their firm to help them get there, versus thinking they have to do it themselves.
Oh man, so much there. And you're right. Prioritization and delegation, two things that would make all of our work lives better. And delegation includes leverage. I think the future leaders in most of our organizations have a lot of ideas for change, and they would gladly put in that extra effort to drive the change if they thought they would be empowered to do it and that they would be supported to do it. So, I think a destination workplace is one that empowers and delegates and leverages and pushes not just work down, but pushes opportunity and also strategy and decision making and prioritization down into the hands of the next generation so that they can help guide us forward before it's their firm fully. So that when they get there and it's time to start paying our buyouts, it's a firm they love and a firm they want to own, and not a firm that is, got some crippling problems that they now have to try to repair after the fact, perhaps too late. So I love that idea that we would, recognize that we just don't have to do it all at once, and we really don't have to do it. We just have to say, okay, what should we do? And then get out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
You can have opinions along the way. You can give feedback. You can support your people with your experience, but at some point you get out of the way. And I may have said this before on a leadership lunch chat. I'm sorry to be repetitive, but one of the analogies that just keeps coming up for me about being a senior leader close to retirement in the business and trying to direct what we're doing, it's a little bit like, sitting in the kitchen and trying to dictate, the wallpaper somebody's going to have to keep in the kitchen when they own it soon, as buyers come through, saying, well, no, you can't hardscape that lawn. You've got to keep that grass alive or whatever. It just ridiculous. We would never do that in selling a home ever, because we wouldn't sell the home. So
Right.
we can't be doing that in our firms as we're trying to prepare them for the future.
Yeah. The other component that I think is really important is agility. And and agility means that nothing is set in stone. So, to have these working groups when you can move it through the firm and having different people lead up different initiatives, and then monitoring whatever you have implemented so that you can make little tweaks along the way for what you learn. you know, a lot of times what has happened, at least in my observation, is that change was made 20 years ago or 15 years ago, and then we set it and forget it and we walk away. And then we say, well, this is the way it's done. It's always been done and that sort of thing. And we want change, but, we don't want to have to upset that. That would take too much work. So it's where you can take little activities over time and be really agile about it so that you can constantly surface what needs to be fixed, or not even fixed, but tweaked along the way, that it's never over, that when you have this innovation mindset, it really is helpful in making sure that you stay with the times. And so I was listening to the town hall, the AICPA town hall yesterday, and there is, I think a lot, and I do this all the time in the workshops, that you've got bigger firms that are kind of, got all these partners. It's hard to make change. And then you have these firms that stay at a good small to mid size, and they've got agility. And so, the differences in their answers are so glaringly different, because they're immediately, like, a smaller size firm is immediately able to take feedback and start impacting it. And you've got less people to kind of, get agreement on to make that change. And if it makes sense to everybody. But if we start looking at a big firm like a small firm, because every department, every subset within a firm is a small practice of its own, and start not thinking about, like, this is such a huge barge to move, instead looking at your practice of, like, how do I have these small little businesses, small little services, where I've got entrepreneurs leading each of those service lines and what they're operating, and let them be agile and be able to surface their ideas up through the partner group and have a way for innovation to happen.
Yes. Well, and not only to happen, and to consider those innovations pilots, or
Yeah.
some sort of a beta process or whatever. If the firm doesn't feel like it can commit firm wide, to just recognize that we're going to try things, and some of them will work and some of them won't. But to have a really good process for bubbling up the learning and sharing it with the other groups and cross-pollinating. We see a decent amount of change and innovation in different offices or different service lines or different industry groups, or certain partners enabling it while others aren't. But there isn't really a good mechanism for sharing and really making sure that people know, hey, this is a success we've had. When we do leadership development cohorts, we try to, we'll say, like, who's raised fees lately? Who will share a few successes? How'd you do it? And who had some challenges, and what were those? And anytime you can create that sort of sharing about this, these innovations or these shifts that people are making, the test trial balloons, then they'll start to get some momentum internally to drive change in other areas too, because people will hear about the success. They'll hear, oh my gosh, that group's doing that, and that looks like it's really worked for them. We should try it. And so it's not just like letting people do it. It's also figuring out how do we talk about it and let each other know, because that's the other piece we see, just like almost like brick walls or something between the groups with no really good collaborative exchange.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one last add to that, as you put that in, is with those ideas going through a prioritization process. That it's not every idea; it's letting people vote up what is the most important thing that should be worked on first,
Yes.
and getting that feedback. What you don't want to do is make that decision for everybody. And so what creates employee happiness is the fact that their voices were heard, that they had input, and that's what creates a destination workplace.
Yes.
So,
Love it.
yeah. So we are out of time as usual, but I want to thank you, Jen, for being with me again this week. And all of you that listen to us each week or listen to our recordings, feel free to let us know topics you would like us to discuss and give feedback on as well. And I hope you all have a great weekend.
Bye now.